You know that moment when you realize you've been silencing your own truth for years, when your efforts to be nice or helpful weren't kindness, they were survival. There's a trauma response many of us never learn to name, and even fewer of us learn to heal. It's not fight, it's not flight, it's not freeze. It's called fawning. Welcome to Inside the Wellspace. I'm your host, Cathy O'Brien. And today, we're honored to welcome a woman who didn't just name this often hidden response, but she brought it into the light for thousands of survivors to see themselves. Dr. Ingrid Clayton, clinical psychologist, author, trauma expert, and a voice for the unseen parts of our nervous systems, is here with us today. Dr. Clayton's new book, Fawning, Why the Need to Please Makes Us Lose Ourselves and How to Find Our Way Back, is already shifting how trauma is understood. Drawing on nearly 20 years of clinical practice and her own lived experience, she shows us how chronic fawning operates beneath our awareness, how it becomes baked into our identity, and how we can unfawn and reclaim agency. She doesn't just write, she tours. Her book events have appeared at prestigious venues like the 92nd Street Y in New York City, where I saw her, where she joined author Laura McCowan to discuss fawning and hold space for deep transformation. She brings her wisdom into public conversation through dozens of podcasts, major media outlets, and columns for Psychology Today, where her writing has built an audience of tens of thousands of people. When the noise and pressure to appease crowd in, when you find yourself saying yes when every part of you wants to say no, this is not weakness, this is survival. Today, on Inside the Wellspace, Dr. Clayton will guide us through how we got there, where fawning shows up in relationships and work and self, and what it truly looks like to step back into your voice. I'm so happy to have you
here. Thank you so
here.
much for having me. I just want to listen to your introduction all day. I was like, wow, that's good.
You're like, wait, is that me? Who is this person? I want to know that person.
I'm like, that's so
Oh my gosh. Well, there you go. And that's the perfect way to start because, that's what we're doing here is to share with our girls things that we might not know about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I found out about you and I read your fawning book, I both downloaded the audio and now I have my own version here. I know. And it's signed, which I'm so happy about. But anyhow, I had no idea that I was a lifelong fawner. And it actually worked for me, but I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So can we just start off? Could you just share with us how your breadth of what you do and how you came to this?
Yes. So I am a clinical psychologist, but like many therapists, I came to this work sort of trying to crawl out from under my own stuff, right? It's like there's the reason I got 3 degrees and have written other books and have done a million trainings and seen all the therapists in town. It was because I felt really stuck. None of the previous language that sort of speaks to fawning behavior ever entirely resonated with me, including things like codependency or even people-pleasing. I sort of knew my intention wasn't ever really to please, that there was just something else going on. And long story short, maybe 9 years ago now, I think, my stepfather died. And right around that time, I felt deeply called to write in a way that I'd never experienced. It was waking me up in the middle of the night. It was stories from my childhood, stories from my adulthood. And ultimately, years in, I could look at what was on the page through the eyes of a trauma therapist and go, I have complex trauma. That's what this is. No one had named that for me. And I, like a lot of people with relational trauma, we go, my story wasn't that bad. I can't use that word trauma, all of the dismissals. And it really just led me on this journey of going, okay, if I had all this information and yet I still didn't think I was entitled to this lens or language, how many other people are experiencing that? And in that journey, as I was sharing more and more about what I was writing and sort of unpacking, someone said, have you heard of Pete Walker's work? And I hadn't, right? He's not very mainstream, and yet he's written this wonderful book, From Surviving to Thriving, where that was the first place that I saw the fawn response mentioned in a way where I was like, oh my God, is this the key to the kingdom? Like, is this, like,
did he use that word? He used the word fawning?
He coined the term, the fawn response, and he did some writing on it, both in that book and there's some other writings on his website. But there wasn't much else out there, right? And yet this
Yeah.
was the thing. This was the thing that I'd been living with for decades. This was the thing my
Right.
clients were coming to me with. And so
Right.
the more that I started to really unpack and research and continue just to dedicate, what was beyond a full-time job of sort of really understanding this thing, seeing how other people are conceptualizing it. It was also like overnight, all of the previous diagrams online that said fight, flight, and freeze. Now they all say fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, but still the definitions were kind of shifting. And I was like, what is this? So
Right.
when I got the opportunity, and it came absolutely for me, but when I got the opportunity to write this book on the fawn response, I was like, my whole life has led up to my ability to write this book.
Isn't that beautiful though when
Yes.
that happens, that this is exactly what you're supposed to do?
This is I mean, I could just spend the whole time talking about all of the dots that got connected up. But
I
basically,
love
for
that.
the people that don't know about fawning, it is a relational trauma response, right? As you mentioned, it's an extension of what we've long known about fight, flight, and freeze, but it presents differently in that you're not actively fighting against or running away, or even freezing applies like, I don't want this. Fawning looks like leaning into the very relationships that are causing you harm. And sometimes that looks like appeasement. It could be sort of flirting or flattering or, the saying yes. Sometimes
Yep.
it looks like compulsive caretaking, like you're absent and yet I need you to survive. And so I need to sort of be helpful and rescue and run
Yep.
circles around your pain. And
Oh my God. I'm like checking every box right now.
me too, right? It was like every single aspect of the
Jeez.
fawn response, I had lived it. And most importantly to me, it also put these behaviors, as you mentioned, into survival. So the body will always privilege safety and survival. So every time that someone was like, well, Ingrid, why would you care what someone thinks about you? Just set a healthy boundary. Like it sounded good. It made
Oh,
sense.
please.
These
Yeah.
were rational. But these were not available to me in my body. My body did not feel safe because
Right.
my only sense of relational safety was built in basically a chronic fawn response, which is to say, it was completely outside of my own body. It was external to me. Are you okay? Are you upset with me? Do you give me permission? Can you validate? And a complete disconnect from me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yep.
totally disconnected from myself. And now you're saying, but just go like take care of you, that it was missing about 10,000 steps between. And the fact that fawning is not a conscious response, right? It's
No.
not a choice. The body leans into the trauma response in a nanosecond that it feels will allow you to survive and be safe. And when one works, the body goes, I get it. And I'm going to lean on that one and lean on that one. And of course, the flip side of that is when they don't work, which let's be real, how many of us have tried to advocate for ourselves and have and set a boundary and it made things worse? The body goes, got it. Okay. That's not available to me either. And
it's situational too, isn't it? Right? As you're growing up and whatever you're dealing with as a young person, which you talk about in your book, which everybody should read about, by the way. Like it's really, it clarifies it all right there. No, it does. Keep going. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. Well, no. And so, all of these different pieces. Yes, the context, right? So that was the other thing where I go, if you're just basically telling me that I'm broken, like why am I engaging in these behaviors? What's wrong with me? And let's be honest, if you are a trauma survivor on any level, you're already riddled with shame and think that you're broken. So you go, okay,
Thank you.
I get it. It's me. I'm dysfunctional. I'm the problem. I'm going to try and go fix it. Don't worry. I got it. But when you think about these behaviors in context, it also became very clear to me that like I was responding this way for a reason, and it was because I was under threat. So to shame me for the genius way that my body adapted to a dysfunctional environment by calling me dysfunctional, it's like, oh my God, that right there, when people get that one piece, when we're allowed to sort of make sense to ourselves and go, of course I coped this way, and thank God I coped this way.
How smart of me. right?
Yeah,
Like when you were talking about it before, I thought, well, actually, that sounds kind of genius for a young person who's
that's
in the
right.
middle of trauma to
That's
be
right.
able to stand back, assess a situation and say,
Yeah,
this needs to be nuanced. Like I
that's right.
can't just yell or scream or push back because frankly, really, w- it's so many women, right?
Yes,
I
yes,
mean, it's
yes.
how we react.
It's not a gendered response. I
No.
certainly have lots of men who identify with it.
Yep.
But generally speaking, I think girls are conditioned more towards fawn, right? Be
Yep.
pleasing, be doting, be caretaking. And boys tend to be more conditioned towards rough and tumble. You're allowed to have a fight response. Go have a voice all day long. That's what you're here.
Exactly.
Uh,
And that's interesting too, because we talk a lot about in the sort of DV world, assault world here, 1 in 4 women will be in an abusive relation, 1 in 3 will be sexually assaulted. That's like you're living in a state, that's a lot of women living in a state of fear.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that we all know, whether you've had that experience or not, that that is the world that we live in. And
Yep.
so constantly kind of hyper vigilant and attuned to like, ooh, am I safe or not right now? And so, yes, so I don't think I've met a woman yet who's like, I don't have any experience with the fawn response.
I know, right?
Maybe
Yeah.
all of us aren't living there all the time like I ended up doing. I think we can recognize at least a moment here or there where you go, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Do you think that there are particular types of people that engender a fawn response? Like, could you say, like, okay, if you're around a narcissist or I don't know. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if you've seen in
Yeah.
your practice, if you've seen something.
Well, certainly you name narcissism, and I go then the narcissist profile and the fawning profile kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's just sort of if
Yeah.
someone's looking to exploit, and your body learned how to navigate exploitation by being pleasing, it's like, oh my God, and there you go in the cycle. But it's really first of all, any system of power, anytime you're disempowered, so wherever there is hierarchy, which is everywhere, you think about certainly your caregivers as a child, you're disempowered there. You're not on equal footing. You don't get to have a say, right? You don't get to have a voice or a healthy fight response in that way. So it's systems of power where you feel disempowered or marginalized. And it's, yeah, people that are looking to do you harm, whether that's, violence or manipulation or financial abuse or all kinds of things. And then again, the other side of the spectrum is when you do need people and they're not there. So if they are neglectful or abandoning, that also engenders a sort of like, wait, wait, wait. Either way, our body is managing the gap in the relationship, whether it's you're coming for me, you're closing in, and I go, ha ha
Yeah.
ha, right? Let me make you
Yeah.
laugh or smile or remember that I'm a real person. Or you're distant, you're going far away and I need you. And so now my body's like leaning in and trying to figure out how to solve the equation.
Yeah.
So as many contexts as you can name, I go, yeah, there's probably room in there for the fawn response if you feel like your needs aren't being met and
Yeah.
that person is meant to meet them. If
Yeah.
you are feeling under threat, if you feel like you're not on equal footing, all of these are ripe for fawning.
Yeah, and what do you how what was interesting in one of the chapters in the book too, you say, I'm a fawn. Wait, I'm a fawner, me? I'm a fawner? How do like, how do you know? How do those of us out there I mean, I definitely had an awakening recently, and I'm not a spring chicken. So I, feel like, how can I still be learning these things about myself at this
Yeah.
age? Shouldn't I already know it? But the answer is clearly no. How do you know? What are the signs?
First
Like,
of all, how could we know when no one was having this conversation? I do want to, I
yeah.
feel like we've been missed by the mental health field even, right? Like
Yeah.
we haven't been talking about the fawn response. So
Mm-mm.
part of it is how could I not know? Well, because no one was talking about it, which is also why I'm trying to shout it from the rooftops. But the other reason how could I not know is what I spoke to a little bit. It's the threat response that's kind of hiding in plain sight. It looks like you're choosing it. It looks like you're leaning in. It doesn't look like you're experiencing overwhelm or threat or harm. But also, fawning is highly expected, conditioned,
Yeah.
applauded, right? We are absolutely taught to fawn. It looks like you're being a good girl, you're being
Good girl.
successful, you're being a good employee. So it hides kind of in plain sight in that way. You're like, well, no, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do to like get good grades, get the job, be a good
Uh-huh.
or even. But the difference is that we don't know the extent to which we're leaving our full self at the door, right? It's like that's the difference.
Yes.
We can still be generous and empathic and all these wonderful things that the fawn response might kind of attach itself to in order to overextend ourselves. But what would happen if I disagreed or if I didn't want to do that thing or if I like, do I feel like I have access to being a whole person in the world? And the world
But
sees,
but that's I think such a great point because again, I just speak from the woman's perspective, woman
yeah,
lens is what we do here is you're conditioned
yeah.
for so long that at some point you, at least this happened to me, I didn't
Mhm.
even know. Like I didn't even know what I liked to be like really. Like I didn't
Yeah,
even know. And there's one point you say too that you kind of like you lose all your habits, you don't even have any hobbies are gone because you're so busy not in touch with yourself. I have no, you don't even know like what is a whole real person. What are you,
yeah.
like what could you possibly
Everyone
be?
else's needs or wants kind of they just matter more, so you just take
Yeah.
up a little bit less and less space, but you're probably so busy doing so much for other people all the time or managing other people's emotions that you feel like you're taking up a lot of space or like you
Right.
have a full life, but it's not really in service of you
No,
necessarily.
that could feel potentially selfish for us, maybe, right?
When we've likely been told that it is selfish, right? Like,
Yeah.
"You're being so selfish and, get a little bit smaller to make me more comfortable."
Yeah, no, right? No kidding. Well,
Yeah.
so how did it like for you,
Mhm,
your own personal journey and experience? How
mhm.
did you so you identified it
Yep.
and you recognized that you were sort of like you lost touch with yourself, which is a huge deal. Uh,
Yeah.
then what? Then what happens? What do you do?
Yeah, well, it's maybe adjacent to the question that you're asking, but it's the memory that just arose,
Oh,
so I'll share it that, before I knew I was already working in trauma as a therapist, but before I'd heard of the language of fawning, I'd long known that all of my romantic relationships in particular were just like different face, same dynamic. You're either unavailable in some way or, yeah, exploiting me in some way or cheating or
mhm.
some kind of behavior that I'm like waiting for it to change, hoping for it, like helping, let me sort
Right.
of solve this problem so that you can finally show up for me. It was just constant and chronic. And
Mhm.
so one major shift is I was married before and I left my first marriage and it was the first time I'd ever broken up with anyone my whole life. Right. And
Wow.
I was in my late 30s at this point. Like everyone from my first boyfriend in fourth grade to everyone since then, didn't matter what was going on. I was loyal, right? And I could see where your pain was coming from, and I was going to be patient and I was going to be all these things. Meanwhile, I haven't had a healthy relationship my whole adult life. I'm just waiting for these other people to eventually kind of show up. So, leaving that marriage
Yeah.
and saying, even if no one else ever chose me, including my parents, when I asked for help as a child, it was like, it was basically dismissed. And I chose me. It
Yeah.
really was pivotal. It was this moment where I went from going, my power lies outside my body when you choose me, and
Right.
going, my power is inside my body when I choose me. And
I
honestly,
just got goosebumps, by the way.
I
Yeah.
know that one sort of pivot is so big because, like I
Yeah.
already mentioned, if chronic fawning means all of my power and safety lies outside of my own body, just even being curious about, like,
Mhm.
how do I feel? What do I
Well,
need? What do I notice is profound.
profound. And when you were talking, the word pivotal jumped into my head, and
Mhm.
then you said it. So,
Yeah.
what caused that moment for you? Because clearly it had been going on a long time,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden, you one day you've had enough. Right? So what
Yes.
caused you to make that? Because I have no doubt there are so many of us out there
Yeah.
listening and listening to all the things you're doing right now going, "Huh, how can I get myself there? What needs to happen for me to get myself there?"
Well, it was a lot of pieces. One is that what my ex was doing and how he wasn't changing. Like there was no evidence of any change on the horizon. But a lot of what we do is we kind of write a story around like it's going to get better. The
Yeah,
future's
always.
going to get better. I
Yep.
have to pay attention to the reality of the moment and go, wait a second. What if this is as good as it ever gets? What if it never changes? Look at
That's
how
it.
long I've been waiting and hoping and helping. And so that was one thing. But the
Okay.
other piece was almost bigger, which was the internal piece. We don't just feel selfish. We don't just get told that we're selfish. We feel like we're mean or we're being an asshole if we
Yeah.
actually stop privileging you and start showing up for ourselves.
Right.
So what we have to do is tolerate, literally, feeling like an asshole, because that's what it's going to feel like. You're going to go, oh my God, I'm so selfish and I'm so gross. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Right. And I've changed. I've turned into an asshole. Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Look
Right.
at me. I'm so,
Right.
I'm not the caring person that I've always been and really had an identity being the sort of caring, empathic person. Maybe I'm just now. And yet at the same time that we're tolerating going, okay, well, maybe I am an asshole. You start to feel, well, maybe I'm actually just leaning into all of these parts of myself that have never been allowed to exist. And I've been told that
Yeah.
is being an asshole. But in fact, it's just being a whole real person in the world, right? Like you
Yes.
start to feel that thing that everyone's been telling you to raise your whole life, which is your self-esteem. It's not that we
Yeah.
had a self-esteem problem. It was that these parts of ourselves were walled off. We couldn't connect to them. And so feeling things
There you
like
go.
our anger and our resentment and these things that other people seemed entitled to, but we're like, I don't have permission to feel all of that. Those are the pieces that allow me to even have some self-esteem and have some agency. And so it's kind of this wonky thing that doesn't feel the way I think we're told that it's going to feel. You know,
Yeah.
that version of like set a boundary as though it feels like it's a victory lap. It's going to feel
Yeah.
so good. And I go, no, actually, it often feels like shit and it feels
It
really
does.
hard. And now you feel like you're doing it wrong and your body wants to pull you back into the old behavior because it's the only thing that kept you safe.
Completely. And
So
people expect it of you. The people in your world expect that of you. Right. And then
people that know your buttons to get you back in line
Yep.
really start pushing those buttons to get you back in line. And so it's
Yep.
so complicated. But the other piece about like what it looks like, I guess what I'm sort of speaking to is it looks like a process. I
Mhm.
can speak to moments. I can speak to moments 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 seconds ago. And I will have more moments that there's no finish line with this thing. There's not like I go from a place where I'm fawning all the time to never fawning. That's not going to happen. Fawning is a part of being a human being, just like having skin is, right? Like
Mm,
I'm grateful for a
love
fawn
that.
response. The difference is we are not meant to live in a survival pattern 24/7, right? When
Right.
no danger is present, where we're just fawning is out 20 steps ahead of the game, guarding against even potential threat.
Yep.
So that's the biggest difference, right? It's like less fawning all the time, more of me in the world. But guess what? Sometimes my body's going to feel triggered or I'm going to feel overwhelmed and it might step in to protect me one more time. And then I go, okay, thank you.
Yep.
And now you can go in the back seat and I'm here again.
And we know you're sitting there should I ever need to pull you out again. Just like
Right.
just like fight or just like
Like-
freeze, whatever it is, or flight, by the way.
That's right.
Any of them that you need to pull out. But also, it's interesting that you said that it never goes away. It's sort of like trauma, right? I mean, it's just sort of like the concept of trauma as a
Yeah.
therapist, right? It's there, it's in there. It's not like we're ever going to just get rid of it. It's because it's our past, our history.
Yes.
Isn't that the
It is the
truth?
same. Yeah, it's just another aspect of healing from complex trauma that I'm always going to have my same story. I'm always going to have this body. Yeah, the difference is that trauma is not in the driver's seat all the time. And so if trauma is not in the driver's seat all the time, fawning doesn't have to be either. And I think it's really similar in that in that way, but it's not healing isn't an eraser. You know what I mean?
No.
Like,
I love that. I love that visual too of being in the driver's seat. Like
mm,
who's driving this moment for us, like for
yeah.
ourselves. Who's taking us. And I also love that you talked about anger because
Mm,
anger is something I never thought I could be angry, but now I'm just like pissed off a lot of the time just
yeah.
because I am, and I feel it and I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that, right?
You know what's so interesting? I'm loving this moment where not only is fawning sort of in the conversation, but so is perimenopause and
Yeah,
menopause.
big
And
time.
that was other stuff we never talked about before. But
Uh-uh.
I think the reality is too that as women, as our estrogen starts to go down, that sense of connectivity and the thing kind of it helps us to prioritize other people and not be sort of the center of our own lives. As that starts to wane and we start to
Yeah.
feel that even rage,
Yeah.
I think there's something powerful about reclaiming that too, just in terms of that time of life of being like this, I'm allowed to be exactly where I am and my hormones be what they are.
Yes.
I'm entitled to healthy anger just like anybody else, right? The
Totally.
the difference is what you do with it, right? That doesn't mean I'm taking it out on other people. It doesn't even mean that
Uh-uh.
the people that I'm angry with even have to know about it necessarily, but I have to know about it. I have to be able to hold it or process it or move it
Right.
through. Otherwise, it's just eating me alive and I'm pretending like by not attending to it, maybe it's spiritual or I'm being the better person. And it's like,
Interesting.
are you
Oh, I love
crazy?
wait, I love that thought. I think that's a really good, healthy thought because we do, I think, whether it's a religious way of looking at things, be the bigger person, blah, blah, all that stuff. No, no.
Toxic positivity, right? All of these
That's
messages.
it.
I guess
Yes.
that's the other thing too. When I was writing the Fawning book, I was like,
Mm.
why else is it hiding in plain sight? And how else is it being really supported? It's like, look at all of these other messages that we're getting, like forgiveness is the answer. It's like jump to
Ugh,
the end of the line with forgiveness. And
right.
first of all, forgiveness doesn't have to be a part of anyone's healing. I don't
No.
believe. If it comes as a outgrowth of other work that you've done, well, that's one thing. But this idea that it's like the panacea, sorry, not for me or my clients, and and let it go, and it's in the past, and all these platitudes, right? We're
Yeah.
told
Ugh,
get over it, shove it under the rug one more time, and then a lot of
mm,
us as fawners, because we're compliant, we go,
yeah.
oh, okay, I'm going to forgive, and I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to be the better person.
I
And
know,
for
and I'm so
6 years,
good. I'm so
ugh,
good. So
yeah.
no, then you feel horrible and who
Horrible.
knows what you do. You feel
And
awful
it's
things.
just yeah.
I had a really funny conversation recently with an artist, and I don't know how we got on it, but we were talking about grudges. He was saying how it has really worked on like getting over grudges, and I said I am a believer in grudges. For my own self, like there are a couple of grudges I hold. Doesn't mean I'm like it's not eating me up at all, but why not?
Well, I think it's so funny. It's like, again, you want us to have healthy boundaries, but
Mhm.
like, don't ever have a bad feeling about someone.
Right.
It's like maybe the grudge is the boundary. It's like, nope,
Oh, I
not
love that.
safe. You're not safe. So my body's going to stay on this side and I'm going to let you go and live your life over there.
I
That might
love that.
be the marker of where your safety lies.
You know what? Yeah, and even the recognition of the concept of safety.
Yes.
Because I don't know that when you're in the middle of things, especially as a young person and what you
Mhm.
talk about in your experiences, I mean, certainly you felt unsafe, rightfully so, and probably many of us do in circumstances as we grow up, but to just really note that it is a safety thing. Like I don't want to feel that way.
Yes.
I don't want to feel badly or feel hurt feeling hurt is unsafe,
Mm.
right?
Well, especially if it's being invalidated by the person who hurt you, right? I
Yeah.
would say if you feel hurt by someone, and this is where a lot of us never learned this skill, like to be hurt by someone and to be able to tell them and for them to really see your pain and
Mhm.
validate it. Like the reality is that's healthy relationship is rupture and repair and rupture and repair. It means you're being a whole person, you're vulnerable to one another because we are vulnerable to one another, right?
Yes.
Like
It's
uh,
good to be vulnerable.
It's good to be vulnerable, and every relationship has to tolerate a little bit of conflict, right? But this is the other thing we've been kind of avoiding in a perpetual fawn response. Like the idea of conflict feels like terrifying. It feels like the hammer's going to fall. And again, I think because a lot of us, that was the map that we were handed. And so building this new internal sense of safety and learning to navigate it in the world also means learning to tolerate conflict, which is terrifying. But here's the thing, for so many people that particularly have a history of trauma, they say it to me all the time. They go, Ingrid, how do I know if I'm really unsafe or if I'm just being triggered, if this is triggering something from my past, right?
Yeah.
You literally lose the ability to discern.
Yeah.
And it's not a light switch. It's not like, boom, suddenly you can do it differently. But this ability to start to hold our anger, even our grudges, our frustration, be able to speak to it in safer relationships, notice when someone is able to repair. These practices are the things that allow us to be able to go into the world and know the difference between, this is uncomfortable, right? Or this is discomfort in my body, or this is danger.
Right. For real danger.
Otherwise, it all feels like danger all the time. And
I know. And that is something that, you were used to, I was used to, but now we get to the choices, right? Because your relationships were the bad relationships that you talked about. And now you have a good one. So you were able to make a different choice. How did that happen?
Well, again, I think, it was the 84 moving pieces at one point in time. But one of the other important ones is that if my blueprint for relational safety was built through fawning, which it was, most of my chemistry then, when I went out and was trying to date or even find friends, it was like my body lit up like, I know this dynamic. I know how to navigate this. I didn't know that's what it was. I just thought it was healthy chemistry because it was the only version of chemistry I'd ever felt. So that like crazy, chaotic, like now I'm a little obsessed. That was the beginning of every single relationship. So when I met my now husband, I think we've been together, 12 or 13 years now. I can't say enough about our relationship and how different it is. Like every waking hour of my life is so different than it was.
God.
But where it started is I was sitting across from him at this dinner table and I was like, oh my God, I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I felt so at ease and it was just so effortless. It was so lovely. But then what I thought was, maybe we're just meant to be friends.
Okay.
Because it didn't have that crazy chemistry that I was used to. Right. So it was also having to create this new map of what healthy relationships look like, which is that he wasn't sort of jacking me around with this inconsistent, like intermittent reinforcement. I like you hot and cold kind of a thing.
Yeah.
He was available.
He was. He said that, like in his behavior and his words. He said
showed
that.
up.
He showed up.
He wasn't gaslighting me when I maybe did bring up some things that I was like, what do we think about this? He wasn't like, stop being ridiculous. That's a you problem. He was like, I could see why you would feel that way. Like, let's talk about it. Like everything about it was radically different.
Yeah.
And, thank goodness I had some healthy people in my life. One was my friend Bill, and I went to Bill and I was starting to say like all the reasons why I was worried that Yancey wasn't the guy for me. And he said, Ingrid, you've always worked really hard to make the wrong guy the right one, and now you're working really hard to make the right guy the wrong one. And
Okay, wait. Who's Bill? And I want him in my life. Where's Bill?
I know, it was so good. And my whole body knew that he was right? I was like,
of course.
And it just dissolved all of that sort of thing where I was trying to figure it out. And I was just then tuning once again into the wisdom of my own body, which is like, this ease, this
feeling,
knowing that he's present and that I'm enjoying myself and I want this to keep going. What if I just trusted that? And I'm so grateful that I did.
Wow. Good.
Night and day.
That is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. And so then the unfawning, which you talk about in your book too, I would say this was big fat unfawn. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this was a huge example. So what, again, got you to the place where, you were able to see these things, able to absorb them.
Yeah.
You were clearly on your own path to unfawning. So
Yes.
what did that look like for all of us to
Well, I
be
think
able
the
to?
other thing that I had to own is what happened to me in my childhood. So I think like a lot of folks, we go, well, my parents, they didn't mean any harm or whatever. We write these stories around it that kind of minimize both what happened and its impact.
Right.
And I'm not here to say, let's go throw everyone under the bus and point lots
No.
of fingers. It's not about that. What it's about is that, oh, let me just back up a little bit. The definition of trauma is not in the event itself. The definition for trauma is how it overwhelmed your nervous system. And you know how we know that it did? Because of the symptoms that you're living with right now. So, this feeling that I can't even have me in my own life, and I always have to shrink and kind of caretake everybody else, and I'm not allowed to be mad, all of those things were
Yeah.
symptoms of
Yep.
unresolved complex trauma. So, in order to start to heal, I have to own what actually happened, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Trauma therapy is very different from traditional talk therapy. If I can't say that I had some level of complex trauma, it's like, well, I can't go see a trauma therapist and do these things like EMDR and IFS, all these funny
Yeah.
names for trauma therapy, SE, somatic experiencing internal family system. That becomes a threshold for a lot of folks of just going, what if I took myself seriously enough,
Yeah.
right, to
Yeah.
say, I'm still living with this stuff. And I've had a lot of clients that are like, Ingrid, don't use that word trauma. I hate that word. And I go, fine, we don't have to use that word, but let's look at your experience of maybe chronic invalidation alone, right? Like
Yeah.
it's never okay to be you. You were always
Mm.
kind of having to be this other person that fit in with the family narrative or whatever that was. So in other words, taking back our truth, taking
Yeah.
back our story, not waiting for anyone else to validate it and go, yeah, that's worthy of looking at your own heart, your own life and going, I'm worthy to look at this and take it seriously.
Yeah.
Whether that's trauma therapy or something else, because there's no perfect path. There's really not like a prescription, one size fits all.
Right.
The principles underneath this thing is just going, I matter. I'm going to take myself seriously.
Yeah.
That tends to be a huge pivotal moment for people. And for me, that looked like writing my story, right? Like
Your memoir.
listening to this calling, yes, to
Yeah.
start to write this memoir. It was like,
Yep.
this might be the craziest thing I've ever done. I had to tolerate all of that narrative. Like, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. No one wants
Right.
to read this. And yet my whole body was like, you have to do this. So listen to the callings and the nudges and the things that maybe you've tried to overcome, but if you're honest with yourself, you're like, I freaking haven't. Start there in that radical
Yeah.
honesty with yourself. And man, I promise that that's going to lead to the next step and the next nudge and the next thing. But we have to start with that reality of where we are right now. So much of fawning is like turning away from the ugly stuff and going, but I'm just going to smile and perform. So we have to stop doing that, even with ourselves in the moment, and go, I'm not going to keep pretending and performing that this isn't my actual experience. And what if I
Yep.
just lingered here, even just for a moment?
Yes. Yes. And feel it and actually feel it.
Feel it. Know
Yes.
this is what I say a lot. And every trauma training I've ever attended, we don't say, what do you think about that? What's your opinion? We say, what do you notice, right? What do you feel?
Right.
What are you experiencing now? It tends to be a body-based
Yep.
experience. Talking also about the nervous system. We're talking about
Yeah.
being disconnected from your gut, which is the
Right.
second brain, right?
Totally. And when you're like in a fight, flight, freeze, fawn, whatever, at least my experience was
Yes.
total and complete disassociation from my body.
That's
Total.
right.
Like I had no idea. Only until very recently, honestly,
Yeah.
do I absolutely know what is going on inside my body.
Amazing.
And that's new. That's like a new thing, but it comes with the unpeeling of the onion, I think.
I didn't even know how much I dissociated until I finally saw a trauma therapist and I saw that it was happening in every session. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't even think I ever dissociated because I was so dissociated in most of my life.
Wait,
that
how did you notice? Like, how did you figure it out? If you're so dissociated, how did you all of a sudden go, wait, I am so completely
I
dissociated?
think I felt enough safety with my therapist and I had enough connection to myself, like enough of the shame was out of the way that I could literally say out loud, I checked out. I'm not here. It's fuzzy. Whatever we were just talking about is
Oh,
gone. And I didn't feel like I was doing something wrong because that I would have been like, oh God, no, that would mean you don't have capacity or like something's wrong with you. So
yeah.
I just figured I didn't do these things consciously, but I think I learned how to pretend that I wasn't checked out, to kind of hang in there long enough to make it look like I was staying with you. And meanwhile, I had left the building. And so being able to name it and
Yeah.
have a therapist who could hold space for it and let me know you didn't do anything wrong. Dissociation is one of our earliest protectors. It comes to
Mhm.
mind when we get overwhelmed. Something
Mhm.
must have been overwhelming. Can we hold space for that? It was like, whoa, okay, this is a radically different orientation.
And words like that, like overwhelm, because really so much of everything obviously starts in our childhood, and then we make
Yeah.
choices based on what's ingrained in us, and then we end up in circumstances, and on and on and on and on it goes, right?
Yeah.
And a word like overwhelm is not a word or a vocabulary word I would have ever imagined at the time, but of
Wow.
course that's there, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
not
no, what it
uncommon.
felt like to me is like, we go, "I'm a loser, I'm broken, there's something wrong with
Yeah.
me." And
Yeah.
we take
Yeah.
it really personal and get filled with shame, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
to not have shame about these things and even be able to say to you, like, "Yeah, I had a lifetime of dissociation," and I feel no shame about it at all.
Yeah.
Or, I probably fawned yesterday and I just wrote a book on fawning.
I love
What a
that.
relief it is, right? Because that's the other thing that pin that keeps fawning securely in place was
Mhm.
shame.
Interesting.
And so to be able to be a
Mm.
whole person in process,
Mhm.
who's still learning and growing and,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah,
relief that is.
it does. I feel like actually a sense of relief just talking to you because I feel like I need to find a really good trauma therapist, and you are not taking new patients anymore.
I'm
So
not, but I
I
hope
know.
you will. I keep
I know.
telling
I will.
people, go on Psychology Today and look for people that have complex trauma in their profile.
Yeah.
And they know of what we're talking about here.
See, I think this is a great thing for us to talk a little bit about now, just in general for the women, because we do all have it. And even if you don't think you do, or even if maybe yours was little t trauma, little t, I don't know if you can have little t complex trauma or if that's all big T trauma stuff. I don't know, but
I don't even use that language anymore, the big T, little
okay,
t.
tell
Also
me.
inspires shame. It's like, "Oh, I just have
Yes,
little." So I just go, "Trauma is
thank you.
trauma." We know this.
Yes.
We know that, veterans get PSD from wartime. It looks the exact same in the body of someone who grew up with childhood trauma. In fact, with complex trauma, which is childhood trauma, relational trauma, that's what complex trauma is. We
Okay.
have the same symptoms, except we even have more symptoms than classic PTSD, which is the dysfunctional relationship piece and the like sense of self that's just riddled in shame. They're also symptoms of complex trauma. So I say if you remotely identify with anything that we've said and we're talking about and you're interested in pursuing therapy in a different way or, even coaches that again, listen to your body. What is your gut saying to you? Is it like, oh my gosh, I'm hanging on every word. This is my life. Then see if you can avail yourself, if it's open to you, to see a trauma therapist. But the other thing I'll say is, it's why I put so much out on social media and different places. There's so many really gifted, smart people putting stuff out that's free.
Yep.
Watch the content. Notice what you resonate with. Right, just that the difference in psychoeducation between like, stop doing that. What's wrong with you?
I
Like,
know.
also this notion that there's a finish line and you're going to figure it out. Like, we're turning that paradigm on its head and we're saying, you make sense. You come by these patterns and behaviors honestly, and you do still deserve more freedom and flexibility. Try on these ideas within this trauma informed lens and language. And let's see what happens from there. And it tends to be a radically different orientation to ourselves, to the world, to other people.
Yeah. It feels
Yeah.
very empowering. And now, I mean, certainly now in our world today with what is happening, especially for women and women's health, et cetera, we need to feel empowerment. We need
That's
to
right.
understand that we really do and can avail ourselves of
Mm,
helpful things that will just make us
yeah.
stronger emotionally. Mental health is so big and so important, and we oftentimes just don't dig into it as deeply as we should.
Yeah.
We talked really, or you mentioned just briefly the different modalities of
Mhm.
trauma therapy. Would you mind just touching on those very briefly so people can hear them again?
Yes, well, I will just tell you the 3 that I think are widely used, so maybe more available, but these are
Okay.
also just what I've used in my practice and in my own personal therapy, but there are so many others, so don't limit yourself to these. But EMDR, that's the one where it's bilateral stimulation, right-left rhythmic patterns based on what we know about REM sleep, how
Yep.
our eyes going back and forth helps you to consolidate memories and move them from right hemisphere to left hemisphere of the brain. Well researched trauma therapy, especially if you have acute trauma like discrete events, it can be really powerful. I've done EMDR, I'm an EMDR therapist. IFS stands for internal family system. So if you've heard of parts work and you hear people going, well, a part of me this and a part of me that, that's this Dick Schwartz. He
Yeah.
created this model, internal family systems.
I
He
read
endorsed
his book.
the book Fawning. Yeah.
Yeah. I read, oh,
So
he did what about fawning?
he endorsed the book Fawning.
Oh, great.
I was
That's
super grateful
great.
for that. Yeah.
You
But
talked about it actually in the when you spoke at the 92nd Street Y, which and it just made so much sense for what you were talking about as a therapist about the different parts of you, which was fascinating.
well, what I think makes sense with fawning in particular, when I see fawning as a protector part, so he kind of gives the parts different jobs essentially. And we all have an internal system that we're working with. We use this language already. A lot of us say, well, part of me feels this way. That fawning is a protector, right? And it's doing its job. It just wants to keep us safe. But it's only a part of me. And so when that part of me is acting as the whole of me, there's a whole lot that's obscured. And so we get to figure out, like, what is fawning trying to protect you from? And it's just a gentle way in to connecting with other parts of yourself that maybe you've never even been in contact with before. I find it super helpful for childhood trauma in particular. And then somatic experiencing, or SE, is Peter Levine's model, and it's deeply body based. What are you noticing, experiencing? They might not even be psychotherapists, they might be body workers. Some of
Mm.
them use somatic experiencing, so it could involve touch, it could be on a table, it could be a traditional therapist who doesn't use the touch piece at all, but kind of directs you towards what you're experiencing and what its goal is to help resolve the unresolved trauma by giving it a somatic outlet, and I
Yeah.
think it's really powerful. So these are such different modalities, but each of them have a somatic or experiential component. And there is a difference when you're looking for therapists between trauma informed, which could just mean, yeah, I've heard about trauma, and trauma trained. And ideally, you want someone who's trauma trained if in at least one, if not maybe several modalities.
Yeah,
That's
I'm intrigued. I'm definitely intrigued by the IFS piece of it, and especially as it links to the fawning. No, now that I'm aware of the deep
yes.
fawn in me, I didn't find it so incredibly easy to find because you do want somebody trained at a certain level for something like that, don't you? Do you?
Yes,
Don't
but
you?
you might also go to their websites. So there are different accrediting organizations
Okay.
for EMDR. I think it's EMDRIA, but anyone who does it is going to have it in their Psychology Today profile. But IFS, I think they also have a list of practitioners, and similarly with somatic experiencing. So if you just Google those terms and therapist, maybe with your zip code, you might be able to find more resources there too. But also, I would say, anyone that says that they work with trauma, have a conversation and see what your body feels as you're talking with them. And don't be afraid to ask all the questions. Like, say, well, how do you think you can help me? And how is this going to be different from talk therapy? Because I've sat on a lot of couches and I've told my story 8 million times. Like, how is this different? They should be able to tell you how it's different.
Right, that particular therapy, how that particular
Yes.
yeah, and that makes sense, and for
Yeah.
you, I know you said you had gone through so many different you'd been to so many different therapies and had
Yeah.
tried different things. What was it that finally worked for you? Was there a particular thing that you found most helpful?
I mean, in all of those trainings, depending on what I'm training in at the time, I go, oh, this is the best, right? So all of those modalities have worked for me personally, even as a client at different points in time. So,
Great.
yeah, I think it depends on availability, for you in your own life. They're all worth trying. And like I said, many others that I haven't named.
And it's a journey too, like we said before. This is a path and a journey, and you do feel it when you're ready for something else.
Yeah.
You do feel like when your body and your everything is just saying, you know what, it's time for more. I need more.
And trust it, and don't worry about hurting your therapist's feelings. I think a lot of people stay in therapy when they're fawners because they don't want to hurt their therapist's feelings. It's like, move on.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, so is there anything about fawning that we should share? You want to share as we wind down? I know we don't have too much time left,
the
but
biggest thing that always comes to me, I just want people to know that they make sense. I just think you're not broken. That's a ridiculous notion. You make sense. Your body was hardwired for safety and survival. It leaned on the only mechanism that it had available to it, and you deserve to feel like you're the center of your own life, that you have more conscious choice and agency, and that is possible, right? So not only do I explore my story in fawning, but 7 of my clients from very diverse backgrounds and experiences have really gifted me with the full depth and breadth of their stories. So you get to see, like, what does fawning look like over here? How did it keep them stuck? What does it look like to move through? And I think that's so helpful because it's not as theoretical. You kind of go, it's what do you identify with, right? You see yourself reflected in some of these stories. And then you also get to see, well, then, gosh, I wonder if I would also feel some resonance with what they've done to heal, because that looks different for each person too. And so
exactly. That was so wonderful. I cannot say enough about your book regarding that. The fact that your clients' patients agreed to be part of it, and you said they didn't even, not one of them hesitated. They just said,
No.
absolutely, let's go, right?
And you'd think it was because they're fawners, but really it's because they have felt more freedom than they've ever felt their whole lives. And they're like, people need to know about this. Why aren't we talking about this? Of course, I want to be helpful, right? They are authentically generous, caring, empathic people. They wanted to share their experience, and I'm so beyond grateful for it.
Yeah, that must have been very. I don't know what the right word is for that, but powerful.
It's for me to be able to even express gratitude.
No.
So be able to do this book with them, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is our book, and now it's our book, like, for the readers. I just go, I love that about it.
It belongs to everybody, and the fact that people can relate to different pieces of it and facets of it. And I think that is one of the most important things after recognition, acknowledgement. Oh, this is actually me and my behavior. How can I change that? So what do I need to do? What are the things I can do? And you have been just so incredibly gracious, not just here, but everywhere, sharing all of this with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of the great work you're doing and for spending time with us.
Thank you so much for having me on. I loved the conversation, and it was my pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Inside the Wellspace. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.